Hello and welcome to another wee talk from me about another book that I love. And this one is possibly my favourite book of all time, so many thanks to my sister who gave it to me some 35 years ago. Lord Kalvan of Otherwhen is a 1965 novel by the American author H. Beam Piper. It's part of his Paratime-series of novels, based on a short story he released the previous year called Gunpowder God, and published in Analog magazine. The Paratime novels are about a futuristic civilization whose Earth has become overpopulated and run down. However, they've invented the ability to travel between different parallel universe versions of Earth, and their population has now started living on some versions where humanity never evolved. The Paratime police exist to stop criminals from taking advantage of their high technology and exploiting lower technology parallel dimensions. But this is just the method through how Lord Kalvan of Otherwhen begins. Calvin Morrison is a Pennsylvania policeman approaching a cabin ready to confront some criminals, when he stumbles into a Paratime vessel travelling between dimensions, and surprised he shoots and kills the pilot, staggering out into another parallel Earth. He finds himself in the same place, but a radically different version, a dimension where humans travelled into America rather than Europe, and has progressed to a medieval age. He finds himself in a small kingdom which is under attack by its neighbours, and although he cannot speak their language, he shows respect to some of the farmers' local gods, and is taken in for a meal only for them to come under attack. So he uses his police pistol to fight off the knights before he himself is shot by a rifleman. From there he is taken to a local castle as a hero and defender of the farmers, and as he heals from his gunshot, he learns the local language, and discovers himself to be in the kingdom of Hostigos, which is under attack because it refused to hand over land to a local religion, that of Styphon, whose priests make gunpowder for the nobility, and therefore have great influence over which kingdoms make war on each other. Calvin, whose name is mangled by the locals into the slightly different Kalvan, studied military history, and has the basic knowledge of making gunpowder, so helps his new allies and begins to turn the war around by helping arm their troops with gunpowder which is slightly better than that made by the priests, and by introducing rifling into their guns which allow them to shoot farther and straighter. Questioned as to who he is and where he's from, he vaguely tells them he is from a distant land, which happens to coincide where the locals believe their gods live. So this man, who they believe to be from the lands of the gods, and has knowledge of gunpowder which is believed to be divinely created by the priests of Styphon, they decide has been sent by the gods, and he becomes Lord Kalvan. The Paratime police, investigating the death of one of their pilots, cover up the disappearance of Kalvan in his home dimension, where he has no family, so isn't particularly missed, and prepare to remove him from his new home. But they realise that he has covered up their secret all by himself, and removing him would cause more disruption. So they leave him in place and begin to study him as an example of the great man theory, where one person can make massive change to the world. Lord Kalvan of Otherwhen shares many features with the Guardians of the Flame novels that I spoke about previously, being a story about someone from the real world ending up in a medieval world and introducing gunpowder and other technology to put themselves in a position of power. So I obviously have some themes that I particularly like reading about. But I think although I like reading fantasy style novels, I tend to connect better to characters which share modern Western sensibilities to myself. Although to a degree it connects to the part of me which watches movies and makes suggestions on how the main character should act, if only I had my personal knowledge and skills. Or maybe it's just the role player in me, which connects to this theme, where I can project me as my characters being thrust into fantastical places and situations, where my modern day knowledge and sensibilities may help me succeed more than the normal inhabitants of these worlds. Unlike the Guardians of the Flame novels, which are more about individual heroics, Lord Kalvan is more about large-scale warfare, as Kalvan becomes a general in the army of Hostigos, leading them to victory, and the spread of the secret of gunpowder begins a religious war, as countries keen to have the new developments that Kalvan has introduced ally themselves with Hostigos, and other nations follow the religion against them. There are a number of battles in the novel, where the author sets the scene fantastically, with battles in the fog and desperate skirmishes as rumours and panics cause plans to collapse. There's also a fair amount of politics in the novels, as the competing princes of the kingdoms interact with the new knowledge that Kalvan has introduced into the world, and try to make alliances and take advantage of this. Some of them scheme against Kalvan and Hostigos, while the others overthrow the shackles put upon their nations by the priests of Styphon, rising up and seizing their lands and properties, forming alliances against the religion. As the book ends and alliances form, Kalvan is made king, since all of the princes of the various countries believe Kalvan's legend to have been sent by the gods, and all fall into line under his divine rule. He also marries a princess, so comes out of the story very much on top. Lord Kalvan of Otherwhen was actually published after H. Beam Piper's suicide in 1964, so no continuation of the story was ever written by him, although a sequel, Great King's War, was written by Ronald Green and John F. Carr. Carr further continues the storyline with the novels Kalvan Kingmaker and The Siege of Tar Hostigos, The Fireseed Wars, and the forthcoming The Gunpowder God. However, I've never read any of these, so I can't say whether they're to be recommended or not. But the original is a great read, and one I've enjoyed for many years, alongside a number of other great stories from H. Beam Piper. Anyway, as always, many thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe if you like what I'm doing, but most of all, you look after yourselves. Bye.